Hello, my name is Lisa Rubin, and I'm really excited to present with my colleagues Alyssa Lombardi, Kennedy Felice, and Michael Donato, reflections on the undergraduate experiences of three former NCAA Division I athletes. They're going to speak about their undergraduate research experiences while competing in three different sports, and we're really excited to share this work with you. So first, there's limited research on athletes and high impact practices. There's a couple recent articles on study abroad programs for student athletes and first year seminars. And then going back a little ways on learning communities, but what about undergraduate research? So we wanted to explore more about athletes' involvement in undergraduate research while competing and in college. So according to Gassingales and WHO, athletes who engage in educationally purposeful activities, which include faculty interaction and collaborative learning, improve in cognitive and academic outcomes. But sometimes these opportunities are not always available to athletes. So there's some definite benefits to undergraduate research participation. One is faculty mentorship. And there are some recent publications that accompanied ours and the perspectives on undergraduate research and mentoring, a special issue on this recently. I know Dr. Stokowski published on faculty mentoring for athletes and research as well. And also gives students the opportunity to develop creativity and contribute to exciting projects, as well as foster independence. But there are some barriers to participation. So for athletes specifically, time constraints are an issue. Obviously, they have a full-time role as a student, but also full-time role as an athlete. Another issue is isolation. Because of athlete schedules, often they are not able to get involved in on-campus activities, especially during those normal business hours of 8 to 5 when a lot of students are accessing campus resources or laboratories and those sort of things. And there's been extensive research on faculty perceptions and stereotypes of athletes that skew negative. And so there's this old dumb jock perception that a lot of colleges have, staff and faculty, and often non-athlete students of athletes. So they're not often given a chance to participate in some academically rigorous activities. And in Ochoa's research, Ochoa et al. Found that faculty might disconnect with students from diverse backgrounds, not necessarily just athletes, but often just by race and non-white students. There's kind of a challenge with those faculty offering them opportunities for high impact practices. And then several recent articles discussed campus culture and partnerships between campus and athletics. So if there is a positive culture around academics and athletes, or there's some kind of partnership going on, then there's more likelihood that the athletic department, coaches, and advisors in athletics would encourage athletes to get involved in activities outside of athletics. So we have a chart here just showing some different information about racial and ethnic backgrounds of the student body and the athlete population in the 2018 most recent years that we could find for these numbers. And most importantly, I want to point out that the Black and African American numbers are significantly higher among the athletes than the student population percentage, especially in Division I. It's about double, and it's pretty high, over 1.5 times in all three divisions. So this is one of the concerns, is access to opportunities in undergraduate research, especially for athletes in the revenue sports of football and men's basketball. So our methodology was to use narrative inquiry, which through collaborative storytelling allowed us to merge the experiences of three different people's time in undergraduate research together. So we look at the human experience through their stories, and this offered the opportunity for critical reflection of their undergraduate research experiences. And we looked for common threads in the story so we can make meaning of the undergraduate research experience across three different people at three different sports and 2 different institutions. So through that, we co-constructed meaning by looking at those multiple voices and looked at these aspects of temporality, sociality, and place, and asked the question, how did the lived experiences of former athletes who participated in undergraduate research shape their environment? And I will note, based on the demographic chart we showed previously, which I'll go back to, both institutions represented are Kansas State University and the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and they're very different in their demographic makeup. So Kansas State University is considered a predominantly white institution and had a pretty significant number of white students. It's about 70% in the 2018 year. So we pulled similar data to this chart. And UNLV at the time of this numbers calculation was considered in the US News and World Report as the most diverse campus in the United States, having 2 designations as a minority serving institution, both Hispanic serving and APISI. So they're quite different in the types of environments that the students or former students were in when they were conducting research. So I will share now. Alyssa will take over and share her story about undergraduate research.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to talk to you guys today about my story, my narrative. So starting out, I was an out-of-state first-generation college student. So I came into college with a lot of whole new experiences. I didn't really understand a lot about how college worked. I wasn't aware of a lot of the resources available. And like Dr. Rubin said, I actually didn't get involved in any campus activities while I was a student athlete. My world kind of revolved around going to classes and participating in my sport. So I was an equestrian student athlete, and I majored in psychology. I really enjoyed learning about how people think, why people do things. Loved all my classes, all my majors. But with psychology, there are a lot of different routes to go. And I wasn't exactly sure which way I wanted to go. I know psychology most likely need an advanced degree. Didn't know if I wanted to do that, just was kind of lost. So my senior year, I was able to intern with the athletic department's sports psychologist, Dr. Ian Knoll, and I really found a passion of mine. So we were able to work with all of the different athletic departments, be able to participate in team meetings, work with students through different types of activities, just kind of do more with sports psychology to help them perform better in their sport and just kind of feel better all together. With this internship, I had the opportunity to participate in undergrad research. So that's actually where I met Dr. Rubin. So super exciting. But we did a research project on evaluating the effectiveness of a leadership development program. So I was able to tie in a bunch of my passions. So leadership development was one of them, understanding people with that psychology, and then sports psychology. So I really enjoyed that research project. With that research project, I had the opportunity to go down to Orlando and present at a conference, which I never thought I would have the confidence to go do. But it was a great experience. I met so many people really out of my comfort zone, but I would have never done anything like that if it wasn't getting involved with undergrad research. Definitely were some time constraints, being able to schedule that all out with my senior year. But it was a great experience. But heading up to graduation, I started to get really confused about my future because I was a psychology major, wasn't sure what I wanted to do next. Did really enjoy undergrad research. Eventually, I met with my academic advisor in athletics and was like, hey, I'm lost. Please help. But she gave me some great advice. She asked if I would enjoy doing her job. And I was like, wait, yeah, that's would be so much fun. I think I would really enjoy that. So luckily enough, at K-State, they had a master's program that went into student development with the track and intercollegiate athletics. So I applied to that and got in. And then my next step was to find a graduate assistant position. Being an out-of-state student, college was still very expensive. So getting a graduate assistant position was a big goal of mine. After interviewing at a couple places, I wound up at the Office of Undergrad Research and Creative Inquiry at K-State. I probably never would have even applied to that graduate assistant position if it wasn't for doing a little bit of undergrad research as an undergrad. So I applied. It was a great graduate assistant. I also had the opportunity to work in their Developing Scholars program, which is a program for traditionally underrepresented students in higher education. So that part was more of an advising piece. We'd have individual advising, group advising. We talk about everything from time management to social justice issues, and it made me grow so much as a person. And also, one of my favorite things was just at the end of the year, they had a big banquet to go over all of the undergrad research that they had done throughout the year with their faculty mentors, and to see them so excited to talk about what they had done all year and to see how much they've accomplished. That was just one of the best feelings I've ever had. So a lot of this has stemmed from me doing some undergraduate research while in college. The confidence I gained, the connections I made, really have led me to where I am today. So very excited about that. But I will give it on over to Mike, and he'll tell you his story next.
All right. Thank you so much, Alyssa. So for me, a little bit older than the other two participants in this one, but very, very um, grateful to be a part of this publication and having the opportunity to talk about my background in undergraduate research, as it was something that did drive my pursuit of my master's degree and eventual landing place in my professional background now. So I was in state. I was born and raised in Las Vegas. I was recruited for football um, outside of outside of Nevada, but UNLV was close and had a lot of opportunities to be able to save money as far as being able to pursue my higher education. At the same time, being able to play Division I football, and I actually started as a walk-on athlete with UNLV and earned a scholarship my second year in. During that time, I started off as a business management major, was looking to pursue potentially an MBA in the future, and unfortunately fell asleep every single day in my business 101 class. So leaned very heavily on my athletic academic advisor, who is Dr. Rubin. And she helped me out in really identifying some of the things that were part of my personality, and which led me to my major in psychology with the expectation to move on into graduate school. At the time, the psychology major did have a lot of opportunity as far as credit earned within a research lab. I had a very fantastic experience and developed a mentorship with Dr. Janice McMurray, who then introduced me to Daniel Allen. And in that was able to identify an opportunity to move more credits into my pursuit of graduation by working in the clinical psychology lab. At the time, it looked like it may have been just something to do within a professional environment, to develop more interest and pursue additional interest in psychology in different ways. And with that, found that counseling was going to be the best way that I could use a lot of my skills, identifying personality traits that were very conducive to driving results and honest results for people that we were interviewing for EVLTs and CVLTs at the time. And at the same time, looking at professional development, which led into my pursuit of a master's in higher education leadership. At the time, for that, we were looking at school counseling, but then took that into the professional development side and looking at higher education. Looking into my past experience with research, at first it was just supposed to be a 3-credit semester, and it turned into 9 credits earned over 3 semesters. But I worked in the lab for over 2 years just because of the amazing opportunity to meet so many different people and find a lot of different avenues in moving forward in my professional career, at the same time as having a lot of support from the faculty and staff for my sports schedule. I had a lot of opportunity to work inside and outside of my sports schedule, working after hours and before hours, just to make sure that there were opportunities for the lab to succeed, and helping writing grants and moving everything forward in the lab itself. A big part of my professional background today is due to having the opportunity and seeking the opportunity to be a part of undergraduate research and really develop how my psychology degree was going to move me forward in my professional pursuit. something that is always available to students. And if you have the right opportunity in that professional atmosphere to develop that mentor under your major specific connection, you have that opportunity to develop as a professional in the future after sport. So something that everybody needs to think about as far as being a student athlete, you have a great talent that will provide this entry opportunity into higher education, and all of the resources within being able to really drive home how you are going to be successful in the future. And that's where a lot of my story comes from, and something I highly encourage every undergraduate athlete to take a look at, really see how your major will develop into a professional career. So that's my story, and now on to Kennedy.
Hi everyone, I'm Kennedy Felice. I'm currently a GA coach with women's rowing team at K-State. And my experience with undergrad research, or my undergraduate experience overall, began a little differently than most student athletes. I had never played sports growing up. I'd always been interested in them. I had done journalism, had written about them. I loved the world of athletics, but I just didn't see myself as an athlete. I came to orientation and enrollment at K-State, and the rowing coaches were there. They tried to convince me to give the program a chance, and I was adamant that it just wasn't for me. They were persistent, and ultimately my mom told me that I had to do it, and I listened to her, and I'm so grateful now that she made that decision and pushed me to really commit to it. Being a part of the rowing team shaped so much of my college experience. It has changed my overall life trajectory, and I learned so much about myself, and it connected me to other opportunities, even beyond the world of sports, that I don't think I would have pursued without it. So my major in my undergrad years was kinesiology. I did not start out there, but I was unhappy with my major initially in education. I was in the weight room one day when we were training, and we had a strength coach intern who was talking with me. He could tell that I wasn't happy with my major. He was asking about classes, and we had had conversations about physiology and exercise science. So he knew that I was passionate about it, but I just wasn't quite ready to pursue that passion on my own yet. And he suggested kinesiology. I looked more into it, and I absolutely fell in love with it. So having somebody in what is considered a safe space as an athlete, those places that you're training or where you're competing, they feel comfortable. They feel like you belong and you know what you're doing. So having somebody there who is willing to bridge that conversation about academics was huge for me personally. I also was very fortunate that I had a team culture that valued academics heavily. We were always told that student comes first and student athlete for a reason, but our team honestly lived that out. We were encouraged to be actively involved with extracurriculars. We were always told to have meaningful relationships with our professors and our advisors and people on campus, and really just to get to know people beyond the world of athletics. While athletics is an absolutely great space, when you come to college, there's so much beyond it, and my coaches pushed us to absolutely make the most of it. So that's where I connected with my academic advisor. We had a great relationship throughout my undergrad career. And I remember as I was approaching the end of my degree plan, I needed to take some more courses, and he was the one who actually brought up undergrad research. He felt that it matched a lot of my strengths. I'd previously taken a research methods course with him, and he knew that I was interested in it and I'd done well, and he just felt like it was something he could see me doing. So I started having some of these conversations, and with wanting to be connected to campus, I made it a mission throughout my undergrad career to perform well as a student. I ended up having a lot of professors who they could recognize and appreciate the fact that I was an athlete, but that wasn't how they defined me. They knew that I was willing to put in the work, put in the time, and they knew how committed I was to learning and how passionate I was about learning. And they saw me as a person at the end of the day. So I reached out, started having some of these conversations, and I was met with skepticism, doubt, people that just weren't ready to try to be flexible and find some different answers. A lot of the time with research, especially at my university and the department I was working in, people would dedicate at least 12 hours every week to research. People would have meetings at very set specific times that overlapped when I had practice, and I wasn't willing to give up rowing. I did have that suggested along the way where it was basically told to me that there was no way that this was going to work. I had to pick one or the other, and I didn't like that answer. So I went back to my advisor, I revisited the conversation, and he was honest with me, and he told me that while he could absolutely see me being successful participating in undergrad research, that other athletes had previously tried and it hadn't worked for them. But he said that if anybody was going to prove him wrong, it was going to be me. And that was the fire that I needed to continue to just press forward and try to find somebody who would understand. I fortunately then connected with Dr. Stephen Kopp, and he was willing to look into how to be flexible. He respected the fact that athletics was important to me, but that I also wanted to be involved with research and have a meaningful experience to add in to my overall undergraduate career. He understood that we can be flexible with this as we go forward. Maybe during season you can't be as involved, but there's an off season, there's a summer, there are other times where you can take the lead on some of these investigations and experiments that we have going on. We did live animal research because we studied physiology and reflexes, so it became, maybe we can do an experiment in the morning and you can't be there for that first one, but we can run a second one in the afternoon, evening time, you can be there for that. Or if you're not there for this whole experiment, you can have more of a role in data analysis or looking for other publications or connecting with other labs to see what they're doing. So it became this just kind of puzzle of putting things together of how I could play an active role and collaborate, but also still be a part of my team, be a rower at the end of the day too. So I had absolutely incredible lab mates. I had a professor who was willing to make it work, and that made all the difference. Overall, my undergraduate research experience taught me a lot. I saw so many of the skills and strengths that I used in competition and athletics, how they transferred over into the real world, how perseverance, grit, flexibility, creativity, and just that problem solving that I felt I utilized every day in practice and competition was also relevant to research and publications and continuing to make progress and moving forward. I gained so much confidence. I felt so tied to campus and like I was really doing meaningful work. So it was something that I enjoyed and I'm so incredibly thankful for. I couldn't have done it without all of the people who supported me along the way and believed in me. And I'm so grateful every day that it was part of my experience. With that, I'll pass it back to Dr. Rubin.
All right, so I'm really excited about the stories. Hopefully everyone that is listening got a lot out of that. I think it's really amazing that these three took the opportunity to go above and beyond and make space for something that does take a significant amount of time and commitment. So all of them mentioned this a really worthwhile experience doing undergraduate research and gained tangible and intangible benefits that really took them beyond their college experience into graduate school and after. All of them entered graduate programs after participating in undergraduate research, and there are some studies that show this is a common pathway to lead students to that next educational level. And both Kennedy and Mike actually continued competing in their sport while they were still, they still had eligibility left and were already in graduate school. And that's showing that they already knew how to balance all of these activities and continue to succeed. As we mentioned earlier, athletes often have limited schedules, but like in Mike's story, he had the ability to go around those hours that were, the common hours maybe for campus, but he could do some things in his times that worked maybe in the evenings or otherwise. So there's some shared themes we pulled out from everyone's stories, and that's that collaborative storytelling piece. So one is staff and faculty encouragement. And so from these example quotes that you can read to yourself, you can see that faculty and staff mentorship had a big role in their success. So Mike had two mentors that were psychology faculty. Kennedy's academic advisor encouraged her to get involved. And Alyssa worked with the sports psychology director that she also engaged with as an athlete herself and took that pathway to doing her own undergraduate research experience. So that shows the importance of someone reaching out to a student or someone mentoring a student to make sure they have that experience that they may not know about otherwise. Another one is student focus with athlete mindset. So there's a lot of amazing transferable skills that athletes gain through their sport. And they also have a deep care about their full-time academic role. So kind of merging those things together, you can see in these example quotes some various examples of that. So creating a project and making your own decisions, having ownership of those kinds of opportunities, taking advantage of this privilege of being an athlete, but that you are more than that, and having the opportunity to develop, other things like Mike mentioned, professional settings that he could work in and think about and develop and grow in outside of the sport or the classroom. So these are some of those examples. And then the third theme, meaningful research experiences, which I think is what we hope this would be all about. So you can see how some of those intangible and tangible benefits are shown here through these quote examples. Alyssa mentioned the opportunity to go to Orlando and present. That's something that is really unique, and not a lot of people get to do that in the undergraduate experience, to present at a conference, to make those networking connections with people in the fields that interest you, to develop relationships and characteristics that Mike mentioned here. And Kennedy also mentioned applying critical thinking and being challenged. And I think that's something that is really important about academic life, having a challenge, using the skills and stuff you learn in the classroom and applying it to a different experience can be really rewarding. So now I'm going to have our amazing former athletes share some implications for future undergraduate research opportunities for undergraduate athletes and also for their mentors. So Alyssa.
Yes. So the first one that I wrote out was connections. So I think this goes both ways. So coming at it from a student athlete perspective, one way that I thought about it is I can't have my coaches write all my references, it's good to make connections to be able to grow. So to be able to have a research mentor, someone that you worked with on a close basis, to be able to connect with and learn from is huge. But also as a GA, I can't tell you how many times our research mentors would tell us that they also learned so much from these undergrad research that they worked with. So both ways, you're making great connections, you're learning so many different things. Creative inquiry, I learned to always be asking questions, even if you think it might not make sense. It's great that you're thinking about it in so many different ways. So on the undergrad researchers part, if you have an idea, let's ask questions about it, see what kind of research project we can make from it. What kind of connections can you make with a professor that can help you create a undergrad research project or get involved in one of theirs. And the same with professors and research mentors. Just kind of elevates that creative inquiry even more. And then self-improvement. So I know I said before that I felt like I've grown so much, and confidence has just grown leaps and bounds from having the chance to go to Orlando and do that presentation, and just kind of creating something was really cool for me. So self-improvement, it gains confidence. You learn speaking skills, learn how to question things. All great things when thinking about your future life and your future career. So yeah, Mike, if you want to go ahead and go next, that'd be awesome.
This is awesome for sure. I had mentioned we have a common theme about connections throughout all three of us. I mentioned major specific just because when you jump into a major, a lot of those things are very, very broad, especially in the undergraduate arena. So looking into major specific, especially for me, was finding out what within psychology is going to be a main motivator to drive me through the rest of my research and ultimately earning the degree. So the major specific actually helped me identify, who within the cognitive lab and who within just the cognitive psychology area was going to help me move forward and identify what it was I actually wanted to do. So working in the lab actually had helped me develop where I wanted to go. So went into my undergrad, or excuse me, my minor in criminal justice. So I did a lot of prefrontal lobe development, personality development, looking into those, and having that opportunity was the only way I would have found that out. There was no opportunity just within classes to understand how my passion would develop into the rest of my degree and eventually into a professional career. And that leads right into the difference in relationships. So at that time, just having that one course of direction for an undergraduate degree, developing in the undergraduate lab, in the cognitive research lab, allowed me to find other connections across campus to then just overdevelop what it was I was looking to do within academics, which then leads into the plan for life after sport. So at the time, even though the criminal justice research and really looking into what my specific research was, um, really was a lot of fun, but I identified it wasn't what I wanted to do as a career. But working with people and being able to really develop what they were looking for led me into counseling. So having that plan, even though I had all this research and time spent in one particular arena of psychology, a lot of fun, but it helped me really make sure that I was going to drive my professional development in a different direction, that I wasn't going to waste any time. And within that lab is that last bullet point there, developing in a professional atmosphere. Even though the classroom is a fantastic place to learn, the sport is another fantastic place to learn. Every opportunity to watch film and develop as an athlete and also develop as a student to know what it was, really wanted to get that plan for what happens next. So the being able to involve yourself as an undergraduate athlete in those types of atmospheres really helps develop what it is you're going to do next. There's a plan. There's no lag time in working forward. And in that same arena, like I did, if you start what you think is going to be a career and it ends up being something that you're not interested in, having that experience in my undergraduate research allowed me to adapt and move quickly rather than stepping back as a professional and trying to identify what was next from there. I already had a plan to what might happen next. So that adaptability comes out of the experiences within undergraduate research as a student athlete. And next, Kennedy, take over.
Thank you. When I think about my undergraduate research experience and how I was able to be successful, a huge part of that is recognizing the connections that I had to campus. Based on my team culture within my coaches, as well as my teammates, advisors within athletics, it was always understood that we were at K-State to get an education. Part of getting an education is feeling connected to your university, feeling connected to campus, being able to identify with professors, have conversations, ask questions, and feel like you belong in the process. For me, that was the next layer in being able to find meaning in my educational experience and to pursue those opportunities such as undergraduate research that would continue to enhance that. Part of this opportunity, being able to make it happen, was having a professor like Dr. Kopp who was willing to be flexible, who saw all of the barriers, whether it was schedule or looking at just overall time commitment or availability, all of that. And he said yes. He said, let's find a way, let's make it work. He understood that while there are certain standards and procedures and timelines that we usually follow, they work well, but is there a way that they could work better? Is there a way that we can make it work for you? And with that, I also feel like I was able to be successful because I had so many people who, they saw me as a person. They could appreciate that I was an athlete. They could recognize that it was a large part of who I was, but they wanted to see that holistic development. They wanted to see me spend the 5 years that I was at K-State and be prepared for the next 50 and how I was able to take on life and be a contributing member to society. So having people who truly valued me as Kennedy the person, as well as Kennedy the athlete, made so many things possible that I don't think necessarily could have been without them. Dr. Rubin?
So some concluding thoughts here. These stories advance our understanding about the value of undergraduate research participation for college athletes. Clearly at any level, doesn't have to be Division I. Obviously, all three of our storytellers today had phenomenal Division I experiences, but undergraduate research is usually available at every type of institution. So that's something that anyone should feel comfortable reaching out to potential research mentors, as Alyssa mentioned, or faculty and staff who are involved in research should look for athletes and seek their input and participation. All three of their experiences were very impactful. So Alyssa mentioned confidence, Mike mentioned skill building and future directions. So all of these things have led to different skills, takeaways, education experiences that are really valuable. And we really encourage coaches and athletic administrators to listen to these stories and take these narratives and positive benefits from their participation to encourage future athletes and current athletes to consider looking for these opportunities and for faculty mentors. That does take, some campus and athletic department collaboration, but it's definitely doable. And I'm pretty certain that the academic side of campus would be very interested in more athletes getting involved in academic pursuits. And undergraduate research does open a lot of pathways for institutions and their athletes. Wouldn't it be great to send so many students to conferences to present research at the undergraduate level, to highlight athletes' accomplishments in research at competitions, and to celebrate some of those unique experiences that students have in undergraduate research opportunities? So we are excited that our publication did come out at the end of 2020. So you can find it. It's an open access article in the journal Perspectives of Undergraduate Research and Mentoring, and their special issue on athletes and undergraduate research. So we encourage you to take a look. We have all of our references in that publication, and we're also interested if you want to reach out and ask us any questions. You can contact me, Ruben, at ksu.edu, and I will put you in contact with our other presenters if you're interested. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your conference.